All right, I will call to order the Center Region Council of Governments General Forum for February 24th to order. Please rise as you're able and for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Mr. Binkley will call the roll.
Mr. Balachandran?
Here.
Mr. Hayes? Mr. Herndon?
Here.
Mr. Kasab?
Here.
Ms. Krishnakudi?
Here.
Mr. Myers?
Here.
Mr. Portney?
Here.
Mr. Bernier?
Here.
Mr. Best? Mr. Frank?
Here.
Ms. Mariner? Ms. Trainer?
Here.
Mr. Heller?
Here.
Mr. Patterson?
Here.
Ms. Stevens?
Here.
Ms. Strickland?
Here.
Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Mr. Beck? Ms. Hartle?
Here.
Ms. Perkins?
Here.
Mr. Piper? Mr. Cervello? Mr. Hammeister?
Yes.
Mr. Harden?
Here.
Mr. Lord?
Here.
Ms. Moriarty?
Here.
Mr. Wilson? Mr. Abrams? Ms. Hycheski?
Here.
Mr. Magruder?
Here.
Ms. Robb?
Here.
And Ms. Whitman. Maybe back to you.
All right, thank you. Any public comments at this time for items not on the agenda? We'll start in the room. Not seeing anyone online. Have any public comments for items not on the agenda? Not seeing any. If no members of the forum have any new agenda items to present, we'll move into our consent agenda. We'll start with, tonight we do have two consent agendas. The first consent agenda will be the approval of the minutes. If there is no corrections or modifications to those minutes, I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
Right, got a motion by Mr. Haymeister, seconded by Rich, Mr. Frank. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. All right, consent agenda item number 2, Parks and Recreation Portable Toilet Bid Award and the Parks and Recreation 2025 Recreation Guide Bid Award. If there is no members that want to pull those items, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Do we have, okay. Got a motion by Mr. Portney, second by Mr. Chinesky. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. Motion passes. Item number 6, Proclamation 2025, 1, recognizing February as Black History Month in Center County, in the Center Region. And I will turn that over to the gentleman from State College Borough to present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and introduce the proclamation, and then we'll have it read for us. I recently read a book entitled Half American. It details the sacrifices and contributions of Black Americans in our nation's fight against fascism in World War II. It's an important read, not because the heroism of Black Americans was greater than other groups, but because that contribution was marginalized and mostly ignored for decades after the war. History was rewritten, and Black Americans were left out of that conflict, just as the contributions of Black Americans have been left out of much American history. So tonight, I introduce this proclamation honoring Black History Month, because we are a nation of many. Our nation's motto is E pluribus unum, out of many, one. We need to recognize and celebrate the true history of the Black experience and the contributions of Black folk. It is especially important that we do so honor them in these current days when even the celebration of Black History Month is being outlawed or at least whitewashed away. Black history, like most of the work toward diversity, equity, and inclusion, has been attacked, and there is an attempt to hide and cover up its real purpose. The aim of the inclusion of Black history, just like the inclusion of the history of Jews in America or Italians or the Irish or workers, the aim of all this inclusion is to embrace and include all Americans in our society. But it's more than that. It is a way to enable America's people to strive and to attain. It opens the pathway for those who have been left out and left behind. Let's be honest, when a plane crash is blamed on an inclusive society, it's an attempt to undo our constitutional system of equality and justice for all. It is an attempt to wipe away the long struggle of many to fight for the American dream. Instead, we should honor those who fought for freedom and for their rights, from Gettysburg to Shiloh, Seneca Falls, and Selma to Stonewall, and Homestead and Flint. Many are giving in and erasing the history of black folk in the United States. But black people aren't the only group this is happening to. So if we believe in and stand for our inclusive democracy, if we stand for our friends and families, for ourselves, then we must take a stand. It's not easy. There's fear sometimes to take a stand, and even a bit of panic too. But we're stronger together, and this general forum should continue to do all it can to make it so for the residents of the Center region. Already, several local COG governments have passed a similar resolution honoring Black History Month. It is fitting and proper that we do this. Some have asked why we issue these kind of proclamations at all, recognizing different groups. The feedback we always get is that those that are recognized feel seen and validated, and that alone is a reason to continue. I'll close with the same thing that I said when I introduced a similar resolution at a State College Council meeting. The proclamation tonight teaches us, in the words of Coretta Scott King, that struggle is a never-ending process, that freedom must be fought for and won in every generation. And so we must do our part, not out of guilt or shame, but with hope and pride, until, as Dr. Martin Luther King said, all of us will be able to join hands and live out the creed written in the Declaration of Independence, that all of us are created equal, that we are endowed with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now I'd like to ask Ferguson Township Supervisor Omari Patterson to read the resolution, and I urge that when he's done, we all vote in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. Whereas each February we observe Black History Month in communities across the United States. Black History Month grew out of the work of Carter G. Woodson and the Association for the Study of African American Life and History in 1926. And Black History Month serves as a celebration of the defining achievements and contributions of African Americans to our nation's economic, cultural, spiritual, scientific, legal, and political development. We honor the central role African Americans have played in our history. And whereas the 2025 Black History Month theme, African Americans and Labor, focuses on the various and profound ways that work and working of all kinds, free and unfree, skilled and unskilled, vocational and voluntary, intersect with the collective experiences of Black people. Black people's work have been transformational in the U.S., and Black History Month sets out to highlight and celebrate the potent impact of this work. 2025 marks the 100-year anniversary of the creation of Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters and Maids by labor organizer and civil rights activist A. Philip Randolph. This was the first Black union to receive a charter in the American Federation of Labor. And whereas we pay tribute to the many generations whose birthright of freedom and dignity and the earned wealth produced by their hard toil, creativity, and intellect was brutally and wrongfully stolen from them, but who nevertheless persisted in the face of unimaginable cruelty and adversity, justified by racial falsehoods to enable a more just and equitable future. The struggle to bring the reality of our nation into alignment with the inspiring ideals and ideas of which it was founded continues today. And whereas we recognize and commend the invaluable contributions of African Americans that have shaped our Center Region communities, we honor local individuals, our neighbors, friends, and colleagues, and groups who have enriched all our lives in so many important and wonderful ways and continue to move us towards the ideals of fairness, justice, and equity. And whereas In the communities across the Center Region together, we continue to work to create a welcoming, inclusive, and engaged community where diversity is cherished and celebrated. And now, therefore, in recognition of African Americans past and present, in this our Center Region, the Center Region Council of Governments General Forum hereby proclaims February 2025 to be Black History Month and encourages all residents to celebrate our diverse heritage and culture and to continue efforts to create a world that is more just, peaceful, and prosperous for all. With that, I move that the General Forum approves Proclamation 2025-1 as read.
Second. Bessie Whitman.
That was a third.
Yeah, we had a motion by Mr. Patterson, seconded by Mr. Myers. I wanted to open up the floor if any members of the general forum as well as the public wanted to make any additional remarks at this time.
I guess it's up to me since I am one of the elders. First of all, to my colleagues, I would like to thank you for that opportunity to acknowledge Black History Month. As I was talking to my brother Abdul, I have now crossed over to be an elder and to be representing my history. My colleague Evan spoke about World War II. Well, tomorrow at Penn State, we will be honoring female soldiers, Black female soldiers, the 6888.
Yes.
Will be doing the movie screening of these extraordinary women, 855 of them, that made it possible for the morale of our soldiers overseas to receive backlogged mail that was backlogged for 1 to 2 years. Can you imagine not hearing from your family while you're at war? And your family not hearing from you? Well, I know what mail call means, and I know for my colleagues who are military what it meant to them. But to know these 855 Black female soldiers never got the recognition, the welcome, and they were discharged at Fort Dix, New Jersey, where I was discharged. I didn't even know anything about these women. So I say to you, if you get an opportunity to see the movie 6888,
Tomorrow.
I said tomorrow.
Did you invite them tomorrow?
I'm inviting you tomorrow to come to the hub. Well, Leslie keeps reminding me she's gonna do that. But please, just like Hidden Figures, 6888
Yes.
is hidden history of Black Americans, and especially female, and our female soldiers. So I thank you for the opportunity to thank my colleagues for taking a stand and acknowledging Black History Month. And to my guests that are here for a moment to speak, I turn it over to the other elder, Brother Abdul.
Yes.
She makes me feel so old. Hey, thank you very much, everyone, for issuing this proclamation. We don't take it for granted. You know, you mentioned that some people wonder, do we do it again this year? Didn't we do it just do it last year? It is important to have a continuing statement that says we appreciate diversity, and it's also a really brave and courageous acknowledgement of the fact that in the national atmosphere, shall we say, diversity and other such words like that have definitely been denigrated. And so, it might feel pro forma, but trust me, it does matter. It makes a difference. It makes a statement, and not just in the atmosphere, but to people. I want to point out that last year, we were here and we received your proclamation in the same meeting that there was a proclamation for the Lunar New Year. That speaks to the fact that the Center region has a long and strong history and tradition of diversity. And it's important to keep an understanding of that as we progress on day-to-day matters. State College has had Asian families and communities in this region longer than I've been alive. And I'm old, as we already established. And I was telling somebody the other day, I have walked the aisles of the Temple Market on Beaver Avenue. And they're probably, I can tell by the blank looks. And I'll tell you about the Temple Market later. But it is, there is a lot of multicultural history for our region. And it's important to keep that as an understanding. I'll leave you with one last thought, which is what seems not that long ago, my younger sister heard about an event that was happening here at Penn State. And she got on the train and came up, spent the weekend. And of course, the part that I'm not mentioning is that I was a college freshman at the time. She was probably about 14 or 15, and she just retired from her career at work. Penn State and the Center region has had multicultural communities as a big part of its fabric for a long time. And, one of these days I'll be able to convince someone, maybe in the Council of Governments, that there is even probably a market for multicultural tourism, just from the fact that within our community you're going to have a Juneteenth, you're going to have a Diwali celebration, you had a Lunar Year celebration. Multiculturalism is here, and we appreciate the acknowledgement, and we hope that we can join with you in celebrating it.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Brother Gary. To your point, I want to elaborate a little bit about the importance and significance of this proclamation today as we unfold the history of what it means to stand before you and to be proud to celebrate Black History Month. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Carmen Wong. I am a poet, a playwright, and I am a dual title PhD student in English Literature and African American and Diaspora Studies at Penn State. And for the past couple of years, I have stood before several municipalities across Centre County to support Black History Month proclamations, each time underscoring Dr. Carter G. Woodson's original vision for Negro History Week in 1926. Woodson created this week to fill the absence of Black history in education, to instill racial pride within African Americans in a divided nation, and to highlight the contributions of African Americans that were otherwise erased from the historical narrative. But what exactly was the racial climate of this country, particularly in Pennsylvania in the 1920s? Many of us know that this was a time where Jim Crow laws were entrenched, when segregation was not just practiced, but legally enforced. Literacy tests, poll taxes, racial segregation in schools and public spaces were legal and institutionalized. These are all facts. For those of us who don't know, though, Black Americans were also being pushed into lower income jobs, and their businesses were often denied access to banks and to credits. Furthermore, the resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan was also terrifying communities, spreading violence and intimidation. Philip Jenkins notes in his journal, Western Pennsylvania History, which can actually be found on the Penn State website, that, quote, by 1925, the Klan may have had up to 250,000 members in Pennsylvania, making it one of the largest social movements in the state, end quote. This is just the beginning of the story. Despite fierce opposition, Dr. Woodson pushed forward, not just to combat systemic racism, but to create a platform for Black voices to demand an education free of white supremacist narratives and to ensure Black historical figures were seen and heard, as we heard earlier tonight. So what does this have to do with us today? Well, almost a century later, Dr. Woodson's fight is just as urgent. As part of my work with the Black History Center County Project, we work to recover the lost narratives of African Americans who made up the earliest communities in central Pennsylvania, despite being ethnically cleansed from this region by racial and economic violence. This critical work and other educational projects that aim to recover and protect Black American history and American history at large are now under attack. The federal government is working to weaken or eliminate the Department of Education, arguing that education should be handled at the state level. And given Pennsylvania's aforementioned history, this makes the proclamation of Black History Month even more crucial. As we see state laws increasing censorship towards intellectual history, laws that ban books, it's clear that these are not just policy shifts. They are deliberate efforts to erase the truth that define us. Across the country, we're being flooded with false narratives about the impact of DEI and CRT rollbacks, attacks that disproportionately affect Black and marginalized communities. These rollbacks limit access to fair housing, equal education, and workplace protections. Worse, they threaten Black businesses, reduce funding opportunities, and undermine the visibility and representation that Black communities have fought so hard for. Dr. Woodson's vision for a week dedicated to the education, upliftment, and visibility of Black people must live on in defiance of those who seek to silence it. I think that's what we're doing here this evening. So I leave you with this. Black History Month is not simply about remembrance. It is a call to action. We must protect the truths that has shaped our nation, no matter who tries to erase them. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much, our council executives and my colleagues and my students who have come today. I was in transit, but I'm so glad that I made it. I didn't miss those wonderful comments. My name is Leslie Lang, and I'm the Director for Adult Learner Programs and Student Affairs at Penn State. I am also the former 2023 humanitarian for the Forum on Black Affairs and the borough recipient of the Arnold Addison Award for Town and Gown Relations, and your Juneteenth Planning Chair, and an active member in the community for 18 years of Ferguson Township. And it gives me great pleasure to be before you tonight for the Council Region to acknowledge Black History Month and all of our accomplishments. And I am hoping that Harris and Half Moon will follow suit next year. We've been chasing you for 5 years. We hope you'll step up to the mic and join us in solidarity and follow suit. This year, our Penn State theme was Change Continues with Us. The current climate, which you've heard Carmen talk about, and the erasure that faces all of us, it's our collective history. We can't let that go. We can't let that die. And because the theme is African Americans in labor, we want to acknowledge that the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, that's the NAACP, who has been on the front lines since 1909 and probably the largest unpaid labor work that we can recognize. They are celebrating 116 years this month.
Just did the Image Awards.
Yes, and the Image Awards, yeah. And talking about the workforce labor, where would we be without their faithful advocacy, their effective advocacy? They continue to fight against racial inequalities, discrimination, and structural racism that Carmen mentioned, and defending our democracy and holding America to its ideals that it espouses even today. Black leaders and activists and organizers have formed the backbone of the U.S. labor movement for years. In fact, I bring to your attention, the White House was built by the labor of enslaved African Americans and freemen in 1792. The workforce included white laborers and immigrants from Ireland and Scotland and European nations. This is documented in our national archives that we need to preserve. You mentioned the significance, I know, in the Pullman porters, the level of excellence and service that they exceeded the standards even of today's travel, despite poor working conditions and prosecution and oppression. So acknowledging their 100th anniversary and the formation of the Brotherhood Sleeping Cars in 1925 is also imperative. Our black workers in Pennsylvania were also involved in many labor movements, including the iron industry for 3 centuries. And there are 5 black-led unions paving the way for workers' rights today, and Philadelphia leads the fight in diversity with more than 50 construction labor unions today. The Bureau of Labor Statistics for African Americans says that 40% are postal workers, 36% are inner city bus drivers, 36% in nursing, 30% in child, family, and social working, and these black workers are still fighting for pay equity. In Center County, we have more than 158,000 residents. Black or African Americans only represent 4%. You're not in fear of erasure. The U.S. Census indicates that 41% of civilian workforce is in educational services, healthcare, and social assistance. In Center County, we acknowledge that. Our top 4 employers are Penn State University, Mount Nittany Medical Center, the state government, and the State College Area School District. Black Americans still face problems relating to the number of jobs, the quality of jobs, the type of jobs that are made available for black people. Black leaders, activists, organizers form the backbone of the U.S. labor movement. And when forces of structural racism and segregation sought to stifle their contributions, their resolve to fight workers' rights alongside of civil rights remains unshakable. Black women in particular have played an enormous role moving the legacy and the development. And today I'm just going to highlight for you, since 2021, we had a historic 7 people of color successfully elected here in our local townships. And I want to say thank you to Pam Robb and Sue Hammergruger and Tierra Williams and Divine Lipscomb and Gopal Balachandran and Nalini Krishnan Kuddy and Carlene Krevkor. That's not a lot in your history for so many years. I'm sorry? And Omari. Omari joined us recently. Amen. And I am blessed. And Tracy's online for college. I'm just saying we're up to 9. I said 2021, so forgive me. But bless the Lord, there are 9 now. So I want to applaud them and acknowledge them for Black history for Center County. And as we acknowledge our community, we need to do more to recruit, cultivate, increase representation across our townships. The racial representation matters. Racial justice and economic justice are intrinsically intertwined. And in closing, as a local advocate, an activist, a community organizer, and an educator, I recall Mary McLeod Bethune's words, who in 1904, with $1.50 and 5 students, started a college for black girls in Florida that became today's Bethune-Cookman University. She was appointed the Director of African American Affairs by President Roosevelt at the time, and she served on the Black Cabinet under FDR's New Deal. And she worked in the federal government and leaving a lasting heritage of goodwill and courage for each generation. Throughout her life, she broke boundaries and used her platform to advocate for black women and workers everywhere. And she said, "I leave you love. I leave you hope. I leave you the challenge of developing confidence in one another. I leave you a thirst for education. I leave you a respect for the use of power. I leave you faith. I leave you racial dignity. I leave you a desire to live harmoniously with your fellow man. And I leave you finally with the responsibility of our young people." The change continues with us. Thank you.
Anyone else have any remarks they'd like to add? Seeing none, we do have a motion on the table, so all those in favor of approving the proclamation, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. The proclamation is unanimously approved. And then- There you go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Did you want to take a
We
picture?
could.
Yeah. Take some pictures. The general forum will stand at ease.
Yeah. Gary, Pam, where did Pam go? And Gary, Sam.
Pam? Yep, call it.
I'll join you on this side.
Thank you.
Yes, we'll do that.
Everybody.
We're in the right places.
Sorry, awkward. Tight room, big crowd.
Where do we look?
We'll look at Ben for a moment here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. Easy, don't fall. All right. If everyone's ready, we'll move to the item 7, the personal leave of absence without pay policy, and I will recognize our Human Resources Director.
Good evening. I'm Becca Pettit, Human Resources Director. In August of 2024, this body reviewed and approved modifications to the COG Personnel Policy Handbook. A majority of those revisions were related to the addition of our 4 new fire inspector firefighter positions. During the legal review by Campbell Durant, the labor attorneys also recommended removing the unpaid leave of absence without pay policy. There was concern that it could create confusion with family medical leave and the ADA requirements, and if not applied consistently, that it could expose the organization to potential discrimination claims. The executive committee was hesitant to remove a benefit from staff and tasked both the HR committee and staff with seeking further clarification from the attorneys. That clarification was included in your packets. In short, the attorneys advised that if the policy remained in place, it should be rewritten to define specific circumstances under which the unpaid leave could be requested and approved in a consistent manner. The HR committee carefully considered the legal advice and decided to retain the policy while strengthening the language. The revised policy now clearly outlines the specific circumstances under which unpaid leave may be requested, the process for submitting a request, the criteria for approval or denial, ensuring consistency and fairness across the organization. And tonight you're being asked to adopt this revised policy, which would replace the original version in the COG policy handbook. As all policies in the handbook require general forum approval, that's why we're bringing it forward tonight for your consideration.
All right. If there is no questions for the HR director, I would entertain a motion. Mr. Frank.
Not necessarily a question, but a possible suggestion. On page 2, item 3D, under the submission request, might I suggest a proposed start date would be a good thing in addition to the duration of the leave.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Hardin.
Yeah, nothing, I mean, I'm fine with what we're doing here, but one thing is I read through this, and I read through the thing, it kind of struck me. If we have an employee, younger probably, that decides to go on, enlist and go on active duty in the military, shouldn't we have some language in there that we would guarantee them a position when they get out? Because that would be, you know, that would help them, encourage them that when they get out of the service, that we would have something for them. So I was just stricken by the fact that that language is not in there.
That's a really good point, Frank, but there are rules for military leave.
I know there's rules.
Yeah, that we follow.
Okay.
They're part of our other policies.
I'm just surprised there's not language in that states, refers to that or whatever.
We have a military leave policy that follows the laws and regulations, separate from this.
Yeah.
No one else, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
All right, as stated in the packet, okay. Got a motion by Mr. Myers, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, got a second by Ms. Whitman. Any further discussion?
So we're not accepting Mr. Frank's addition of the date? Or is that just an administrative change that
I'm happy
staff
with
will
that
make?
adjustment, yeah.
I just want to make sure that's okay, that accepting.
Absolutely, I don't have a problem with that change.
Yes, that was my motion.
Okay, so as stated in the packet
Yes.
with Mr. Frank's
Right,
amendment?
yes.
Okay, and do you second that amended vote? Okay, Betsy
Sorry.
seconds the amended motion. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 8, Parks and Recreation, Whitehall Road Regional Park Concession Pavilion Design Architect and Engineering Contract. And I will recognize Ms. Owens.
Good evening. So many of you know that we have presented this proposal to you at several different meetings throughout January and February, so I won't go into all the specifics that we got into, but the good thing is that we had reached a consensus through each of those committees. As we approached the Finance Committee, we added some language to that motion, as you'll see in the agenda packet, to address more of the specifics on the timeline of the project, the overall project cost, and also a clarification on who this is actually with, the contract is with the authority. In addition to that, once we moved into the Executive Committee, the Executive Committee also added on a request simply for transparency with the project to provide project updates like we have been for the Whitehall Road Regional Park and Millbrook Marsh. So we have incorporated some of that into your motion this evening, which is why it became a rather lengthy motion. I will say that we have reached out to the consultant, feel comfortable putting together a timeline that was requested to try to stay on track as best we can, and also have looked more specifically into the overall aesthetics of the facility. We did discuss that function, sustainability, and cost effectiveness are really important with this project. That'll be a main focus as we transition into a project team to put this together. Our facilities administrator, our exec director, we have all reviewed this proposal in front of you this evening. Feel very confident and comfortable with with Fernsler and Hutchinson, who we have done work with previously on phase 1. But I am happy to answer any questions that you might have about any of the specifics.
Any questions for the director? Mr. Patterson.
Who is the project manager? Or is there a dedicated project manager for this project, or is it the same one across multiple projects?
There's no specific project manager, however, this contract does include some project management oversight. There are some responsibilities that our team was handling internally. For example, I'll use Millbrook Marsh. We had a design consultant on that project who wasn't managing like certified payrolls and some of the more detailed payroll addendums and things like that. So that is built in there. We will have to work as a team with the facilities administrator and our staff to kind of work through a plan as we go through construction and through the process. Jim Carpenter, who's here as well, has been through several pavilion builds, has seen how these things work. We're trusting expertise within our team to try to help walk us through kind of a smaller project.
Okay, so I guess if I were to summarize that, you're saying that the team has done these smaller pavilion type things before, feel good about the team executing?
Yeah, we don't have any additional project management funds set aside specifically for this project.
Do you explain who the staff lead will be on the project?
The facilities administrator will be helping to oversee kind of the day-to-day construction on the site as well.
I guess I'll just say, for the record, I'm nervous. I guess my understanding is we had a fairly much larger project that had some complications with not having kind of the known unknowns ironed out, if you will, and so I guess, you know, if we could just, you know, in those updates, just make sure we're clean on those, that all our I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
Was he next or? Oh, okay. Go online. Got Mr. Balachandran and then Mr. Myers.
Thanks a lot. I had a question because in the packet, it looked like there were a number of proposals from various engineering firms. And am I reading that correctly? I just wanted to clarify because it looks like some of the proposals seem to be cheaper than the one that we've chosen. Is that an accurate reading of those documents? And I assume that we're getting something more and better from this current one, if I'm reading it all correctly. Is that accurate?
No, so Fernsler and Hutchinson is the design architect that we had worked with on phase 1 of Whitehall to build the restroom facility. Originally, this concession facility was a part of that. So they had already designed and spec'd out drawings for the building. We worked directly with Fernsler to provide us with a proposal on this project. What I noted in the agenda packet was there may be some additional engineering services required depending on whether there are different basically guidelines, rules that we have to go through in the municipal process for land development or anything like that. So there may be some additional engineering responsibilities. So that was just kind of a side note to this, but this does include structural engineering as well. So I just want to be clear about that. The engineering I'm talking about is more of a civil side for engineering.
So I guess, like, for lack of a better term, it looks like what packets we got, it was almost like the Fernsler Hutchinson, they were like the general engineering contractor, and there may have been like subcontracted for smaller engineering projects that were included within the packet, but there isn't like the contract right now that we're approving. It's not like it's going out, it's gone off the bidding or something. It's just a pre-existing group that we have worked with before.
That's correct, yes. Everything in the packet's included, and those are all subs underneath Fernsler and Hutchinson.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to address, I think, what Mr. Patterson was asking about. I just wanted to, I know we haven't moved or seconded this yet, but I think your concern was you didn't name the agreement that shall not be named. I think you were talking about the solar power agreement before, as far as keeping track of what we're doing in a orderly way. And in the executive meeting, we talked about how to word this so that it fulfilled our fiduciary responsibilities, while at the same time gave us flexibility, because as we found with that agreement, and sometimes you find with other agreements, that things come up that you're not sure of. So while it says it is not to exceed, it says not to exceed without general form approval. So therefore, it really does put the onus back on the general forum that if it's going to approach or go over this number, it's not to until we say yes or no. And the other way that we thought we'd stay on top of it is to mandate in the resolution that a monthly status report be issued so that we can stay on top of it. So we wanted to kind of address both things that way. So I think that's what your concern was, and we were concerned about that too. And maybe it wasn't, but I think that's why we addressed it this way.
Whitehall Regional Road Park is not open right now because of some things missed. I'll just put it that way.
We've had a number of projects
Yes.
over the years that have fallen into this category, whether it be that or some of the parks projects. So we thought if we handled it this way, got consistent reports, and the forum had a vote on what we were doing, we were very clear about it.
Thank you.
Mr. Harden, did you have a question?
Yes, I have a comment. And I have to agree with Mr. Patterson. Because in the immortal words of Yogi Berra, deja vu all over again. This is the same way we did Whitehall Regional Park. It still isn't open. And I'm gonna make a statement here tonight that I want everybody to realize that we have an amount that has been delegated for this project. We are not exceeding it. I will not vote for one more dollar for this than what has been allocated. So if you want to continue the same way we've done it in the past, and what's the other thing you say? Keep doing the same old thing, expect different results. You know what the definition of that is. So I'm just here to say tonight that if you want to go, proceed the way you're going, fine, go for it. And just remember, when you come back for money, it's going to be hard.
Oh, well, then, Mr. Bernier, you have a question?
Yeah. I would ask for everyone to keep an open mind here. I hear what Amari's saying, I hear what Frank's saying. As someone who was involved in the interviewing and the selection of the new facilities administrator, I would say that it's not, and he being part of the team that's going to oversee this, it's not doing things the same way as before. This person brings a skill set to the team that the team has not really had before. I think that's a fair statement. So I'm just asking all of you to not pass judgment here until this team has an opportunity to oversee this project. Thank you.
Mr. Frank?
I would just,
I think Rich has the floor, doesn't he?
He does,
okay.
Yep, you're good.
I would just offer a further qualification of what Mr. Bernier just shared, in that we are focused on Whitehall, and there was failures in that project, and we're all accountable for those across the board. There was also another project that was going on about that same time under the authority's watch and everything like that, and for all intents and purposes, that seems like to have been a very successful project that came in on time within its budget and whatnot. I would offer that what is being proposed here matches more of the Millbrook project than the Whitehall project and everything. And then the other key difference being that we do have a facility administrator coordinator at this time. A reminder, we had one at that time too, and we had to adjust fire, and we still overcame that. But with the team, the current team, especially the battle-tested team, surviving those two projects, I know personally I'm looking forward to them delivering within. But Mr. Harden's point is absolutely correct. If we're going to say a budget number, that's what we need to do, unless we come back here and it gets approved by this body. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Moriarty?
I'm fine now.
You're good? Okay. I was going to say, if there's no other questions for the director and everyone's comfortable, I would entertain a motion. Yes, Mr. Heller.
I do have one question. Where does it say in the contracts that it does come back to the general forum? In the actual contracts? I get that, but the contract. So the motion supersedes the contracts? I just want to make sure I understand.
So that governs what the administration and the authority can do. So they could not authorize anything more than what is in here under that contract unless the general forum approved it. The contract is for this amount, so if they needed to exceed, it will have to come back here before that can be done.
Okay. Because I was reading through the contracts earlier, and of course there's, well, if we don't pay invoices, et cetera, and times, standard stuff, right? Net 30, all the other good things. But again, just to confirm, it's not called out in the contracts, it's strictly in the motion.
That's correct.
Mr. Lord.
And it would still be true even if it was not in the motion. Simply to exceed that number would require the general form's approval, whether or not it's in the motion. It's just being explicit about it.
Anyone else? At this time, I'd entertain a motion if there's no further questions. As stated in the packet, Ms. Christian-Cootie? Okay. Do we have a second?
This is Matt, I'll second.
Second by Mr. Heller. Any further discussion? I do have something I want to just throw out there. I understand it's professional services. I understand things do come up, but is there any guide rails that would prevent the architect from going at risk in continuing their services without coming back to us that it's going to cost more than what it is?
I don't know about any specific guardrails other than our team managing this agreement and watching it along the way. We have been very clear in discussions with the architect about what can be included, and we can make that clear. There will need to be the amendment to get the timeline added into the agreement as the motion calls for, and we can make it clear at that time that this will be a very strict limit. And I am pretty sure Christy can correct me if I'm wrong, but that has been made very clear to date that these are firm limits.
Yeah, I think the motion's set up really nice. I do understand things are going to come up, and as Mr. Myers had pointed out in executive committee, it's bound to happen where a project, things come up and it just goes, it's going to cost more than anticipated, but I'm glad to see that, we have stated comes back to general forum for approval.
And if I might add.
Yes.
That's why we put in the specific motion, the idea that it would have to come back, and also the reporting, so that it wouldn't be a surprise all of a sudden that, oh, no, it's not working.
Yeah.
We'll know along the way to try to work with some of the problems that we've had with other projects in the past and put in the system so that we understand what's going on. Hopefully, we have no project that is a cost overrun, but anybody that's taken their car in to get fixed and said it was going to be X number of dollars and turns out to be Y, there can be problems. So we want to understand what they are.
Right.
If I could also add, I think it is worth noting that your cost overruns on projects like this are typically in the construction phase, not in the design phase. Design is a pretty standard practice where they know what they need to lay out. One of the advantages of Fernsler and Hutchinson is that they have already worked on site. They have corings from the site already. So they know the conditions of the site. They know the aesthetics for the site. They are able to give us a really sharp estimate of what this project should cost us. It is the construction where we will really need to be very careful, because that is where you're typically going to see possible overruns.
Thank you. I do like the concept of the monthly status report. I think that will even be provided to any relevant committees along the way. So as you're giving your committee reports in your municipalities, you can kind of have those discussions or, heads up ahead of time. So I think, we got a good communication chain going. So if there is any further discussion, if not, all those in favor of adopting the motion as stated in the packet, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion passes. Item 9, university report, and we'll recognize Mr. Morales. See him online there.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I apologize to everybody for not being there in person this evening. But I have just a couple things to share, and of course, happy to answer any questions that anybody might have. So first, I just want to start by recognizing this past weekend was Dawn. For those of you who attended, I thank you very much. I know I saw some folks on the floor Friday night. But again, what a great weekend for the university and for our community. This year, our students raised a record-breaking amount of money, $17.7 million. So really a tremendous goal accomplished, and again, thank you everybody for your support with that. I know a lot of folks are involved on the back end of it, so thank you. The other thing I want to mention, obviously the university, my office especially, right now is going through the review process for a lot of the executive orders that we have been hearing about. Right now, we are reviewing those. We have not necessarily taken any action as of right now. We are still waiting from guidance from our general counsel and et cetera to see exactly what has to happen. But our values are still our values, right? Our mission is still our mission, and we'll continue forward doing the best we can for our community at the university. As we learn things, we do have a website that updates the executive orders that come through. I can share that with everybody if you're interested in seeing that. We are communicating to our community, to our deans, who then communicate down to our faculty and staff in their respective units, and then other unit leaders as well. So as we know things, we are actively communicating those. This morning, there was a article or news story released with President Bendapudi, and mentioned, well, it was a letter from her essentially kind of talking through some of these things. So again, I could send that out. But again, we are in the process of reviewing everything. Right now, there's a lot more questions than answers, and I apologize. So if you do have questions about things, I'll do the best I can. But right now, we just, quite frankly, don't know just yet, but we're working on it. So I'll pause there, see if there's any questions regarding that before I move on to my last couple points. And I apologize, I can't see folks in the room that well, so Mr. Chair, if you could help me.
Yep.
See Gopal's hand up.
Yep, we got a question by Mr. Gopal there.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Julian, for that update. I just want to make sure that I hope that the university is paying attention to what is going on in other universities that have tried to comply with these orders. And it has resulted in a great deal of stress and distress to a lot of the most vulnerable populations in the university. And I hope that the university and the administration is mindful of how these are implemented, whether it's prudent to implement them in any kind of overt way. I mean, I've not looked at them very carefully, but from what I have seen at other universities, it's been extremely, extremely troubling. And so I hope that that is entering into the calculus for the university, that whatever has to be done, I understand that obviously the university has to comply with it, but there's a real cost, I think, to our community and to the underlying values that we have if these things are implemented in a way that's really causing a lot of harm to individuals, both on campus and throughout our community. So I just wanted to add that in as both a question and a comment, I guess, as far as how you've seen the rollout occur in other places, and whether hopefully the university is watching and learning from the missteps that have occurred.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, Gopal, that's why you'll find that we're not necessarily rushing into anything just yet, right? I think we are taking our time with this and making sure we understand everything. And I'm sure you can appreciate as a lawyer, I mean, every lawyer has a different read on these things, right? So trying to figure out what they actually mean is a challenge in itself. So So yeah, 100%. I think anytime you're dealing with people first, you want to be cautious and proceed with caution and make sure you're doing everything you absolutely can. But yes, we are taking our time. We are keeping a close eye on our peer institutions, other institutions that have issued statements. There haven't been too many with public statements, but we continue to monitor that situation as well. But yeah, I think we share the sentiment that you've shared just now, that we want to make sure that we are doing this properly. So whatever that might be, it might who knows, but whatever that might be, we want to make sure that we're cautious and make sure we're doing it in the best way possible.
All right, Ms. Morati.
I guess I'm wondering about, considering that the big quote, 10 schools across the nation are probably some of the biggest in the country, is there a collusion between these schools? Are you speaking together with these schools considering we're supposed to work with them anyway? Or it just seems to me that there must be a lot of power within those institutions to really take a stance about what's happening, considering the number of students in these public institutions who rely on what the Department of Education administers.
Yeah, so I apologize. I couldn't hear too well what the question was, but I think I understood. Are we working with our other Big Ten peer institutions? And I apologize if I misheard that, but yes, we do currently work. I mean, it is also a tricky situation to navigate as laws are different from state to state as well. There are some Big Ten institutions that have had to deal with some of these things that are handed down at the state level and not necessarily the federal level. So we are working with some schools like Iowa and some others that have experience in these areas. I wouldn't say we're formally working, but we have obviously colleagues in these offices that we speak with and monitor. But there's been no cohesive effort amongst all Big Ten schools as of the moment, or at least a joint statement that has been released or anything like that. And I apologize if I misunderstood your question again. I was having difficulty hearing it. So.
That answer, Ms. Moriarty?
I also want to know, does Penn State know the financial impact to this community of some of these decisions?
I'm sorry, again, was it
Can you pass that down just a little bit?
Does Penn State know the financial impact to the community based on some of these decisions? Executive orders?
Yes.
Oh, sure. I mean, obviously, we know there is an impact. Have we quantified that impact to the community? Not necessarily, no. We released information and articles, for example, with the NIH research funding, the university would stand to lose about $35 million if those were to be fully executed, right? So, and it's not just the money, it's obviously life-saving research that we're doing at our hospitals, obviously here in University Park as well. So it's the money, but also the amount of research that really is being done here in a lot of different ways across a lot of different STEM backgrounds, right? So really worrisome about that. But no, we hadn't necessarily quantified, because we don't know, right? We don't know what this impact will have. If it means jobs or other things, we're not sure yet. We don't have the answers to that just yet. So we haven't necessarily quantified what the impact would be locally at the university and to the community.
Mr. Kasab.
Hi, Julian. Real quick, one question I have, we all know rumors can be very damaging. One of the things I've heard is that DEIB programs have been changed in some or taken off websites. Is that factual?
Not to my knowledge, Kevin, no. Okay. I have no documentation, at least centrally, that there's been an initiative. In fact, I think I've been in plenty of spaces where we said we weren't going to do that just yet, as far as change the names of things or scrub websites. Now, if individual units have done something that I'm not aware of, that's possible. I'm not saying anybody's misleading you, but at least to my knowledge, no, we haven't officially started to change the names of. Other than units that were already in the process of changing, there have been some instances where units were already in the process of changing their names, and just so happened coincidentally changed when these executive orders were handed down. But no, we haven't made a central effort to scrub websites or change names or job descriptions or anything like that.
Thanks, Julian.
Mr. Myers?
Yeah, I think I can add, Julian, I don't think you were at the Penn State Board of Trustees meeting. Some people may know that I'm the governor's rep to the Penn State Board, and what Julian just reported is exactly correct. That was at a public session in which it was, that question was asked about those types of descriptors, and nothing's been changed as far as anything public or private as far as describing what the mission is of the university to move forward with those things. So just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just
Ms.
to add to
Perkins?
that, in terms of DOD funding, there has been sources that have DOD funding that have been required to remove the DEI at the university.
Thanks.
Mhm.
It does get very confusing.
Yes.
Yeah, Ms. Moriarty?
Let me scream.
Yep.
Is there any issue with the administration of the Pell Grants and the student aid with the elimination of the Department of Education?
Yeah, as of right now, no, right? So Pell funding, as of right now, federal funding as it pertains to student financing or student loans, et cetera, is moving forward. Now, I don't know, and I can't promise what tomorrow or next week will bring or whatever it is. I don't have any of that insider information, but as of right now, and I know, things have been caught up in courts and judges and lawyers are getting involved and district AGs have been getting involved. So no, as of right now, there's been no direct messaging regarding any type of funding as far as, Pell Grants, Stafford loans, et cetera, student funding for their education.
Mr. Heller?
Yes, to Mr. Kasab's earlier question, I also want to direct folks to the university's strategic plan. And one of the 6 pillars that is up there right now for everybody to see is fostering diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So it is one of the 6 pillars that's called out with a nice expansion too. So everybody's welcome to take a look at that. It's an important one. Yeah.
I think it's just a bit confusing. As was stated, there are some departments within Penn State University that may be making some changes. So I appreciate that it's on the website, but it's still out there, and I think it's still occurring in different departments. And I guess that's the big community concern.
And Kevin, I could clarify that. Again, to my knowledge, I wasn't aware of any websites being changed. I know there has been some nuance with research grant applications and wording that has been handed down, not necessarily by the university, but wording that suggested wording that should not be included in applications for federal grants. But again, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, but I'll double check that no websites officially have been altered. But again, I could double check that.
Thanks, George.
Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate the update, Mr. Morales. This is Sutan here. I know that in the past I have sort of requested some awareness raising and by the university, but I do appreciate the measured approach that the university is taking. I'm aware that a lot of institutions nationally have been very reactive and proactive in making changes that we started to see have actually, been unwise, given some of the mandates that have now been shown to be censorship and things that were not really in line with some of the recent Supreme Court rulings around race and admissions, et cetera, et cetera. So I do appreciate the measured approach that the university is taking. And despite many of these changes not necessarily happening here locally, I do think it's important that we look to different states who have, prior to this recent administration coming in, have been has shifted given their more localized governments that have sought to make changes to higher education. And so I think we can look to those as examples of what potentially could happen here. And so I do, again, just appreciate the awareness raising, appreciate the measured approach, the communication, and hopefully that, you know, we all sort of like come together and rally around the sort of shared values that we have for our citizens here, for the university and the students who reside in our locale. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Krishnakudi.
You know, I just, as Supervisor Magruder was talking, I just thought of something. You know, we had the proclamation earlier when, and Supervisor Rob, you talked about the event tomorrow. And I just wanted to state, you know, how thankful I am that Penn State was not proactive or reacting too early, because all these events that happen at the university, they are what enriches our community too, right? So I just, and I know Penn State is committing, you know, funds and support to other events happening in March and April, you know, around Women's History, we'll have our Pride Month and Asian American History Month. And so having that commitment from Penn State is a very big deal for our community. And that impact too. So, you know, there's the impact of dollars, but there's also this other impact. So us, Penn State saying it's committed to those values of fostering diversity, inclusion, belonging, it matters to this community, to all the places that our campuses are. So I just wanted to reinforce that and, you know, thank you for staying that course.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions before move on?
Not seeing any in the room. I think we got them.
Oh, okay, fantastic. Well, again, this is ongoing. So as I know more, you know, I'll be sure to communicate out to everyone, and everybody's aware of any decisions that we're planning on making or anything like that. So again, more to come, and we'll continue to work on it. Just some other, just to finish up, but just to mark everybody's calendar, spring break will be March 10th through the 14th, I believe, the 15th. I forget what that Friday is. My fellow Penn Staters can correct me if I'm wrong, but that week will be spring break. Yeah, 10th to 14th. And then lastly, I've been asked, I'm working with a graduate student, PhD candidate. She and her group will be doing a seminar that's focused around campus research to community impact and advancing local policy using local science. She had asked me to make a plug to local elected officials. If you are interested in attending, I believe the event will be April 14th, starting at 10 a.m. I think that's a Monday. I don't have my calendar in front of me, but in any case, as more details become available, I will share those out. But if you do have an interest in attending, there'll be some breakout sessions, some opportunity to talk with some researchers, some PhD students, etc. We'd love to have you on campus that day. So again, I'll share more information as it's available, but just an FYI that's coming. So, and if there's no other questions, I thank you all, and hope you all have a great night.
Any questions? We got them. Thank you. State College Area School District Report. Is Ms. Brandt or a representative of the school district here? I don't believe we have anything written provided. The Executive Director's Report.
Thank you. This evening, wanted to give an update on Whitehall Road Regional Park. As been mentioned several times tonight. I have good news, but I also have bad news on this, unfortunately. I shared the good news last week as on Thursday afternoon, the minor alteration plan was officially recorded with the county, which was one of the last major steps needed to get our occupancy for the park. However, that very afternoon, I also received the stormwater inspection report back from the stormwater engineering firm for the township, and there are at least 5 pages worth of comments for corrections that need to be made to the stormwater report. This includes a lot of minor details. I think there was one label that was 0.05 feet different than what was in the comments on the sheet. They need to know which one of those is correct. But there are at least 2 more concerning items in the report for me, which is that there are at least 2 pipes that are shown to be installed at a much lesser slope than what was designed. And so the comments call for relaying the drain for these pipes on site, which could be significant work. I have forwarded this on to Stahl Schaefer, who was the engineer for this project, to begin working on all of these corrections. In the meantime, I will likely start a conversation with the Ferguson team about looking at Shorty on this project in the meantime as a way to still move forward with occupancy until these changes can be made. They made that clear that that was an option for this part. So that is something we will explore in order to continue moving forward towards the opening of Whitehall Road Regional Park. Any questions anybody has on that? I know it's not the news anybody was hoping for, but I'm progressing with it as much as I can, as well as I can. What I cannot do is go back in time and change what was done before my arrival. The only other thing I wanted to mention this evening, which I've discussed in multiple committee meetings so far, but for everybody else, is that we are moving forward with a change to how we manage the plans of the COG leading into the budget process. So rather than doing both the program plan and the CIP throughout the year, we are going to do one combined plan that right now we are calling the Strategic Guide to Services and Investments. So we will provide all of the core information that everybody is looking for what staffing looks like, what the costs for each agency look like, the same thing on the programmatic level for those, and then we will also include additional data on any investment options for the year. An investment will refer to anything to deal with a facility, a vehicle, piece of equipment, anything that would traditionally be in the CIP. These will include financial breakdowns for all of these items and the impacts to each of our communities. And then once comments are made, as was discussed last year, we will do, I've referred to as kind of the Amazon style comment structure, where even if 5 communities highly support something, but one community does not, we will feature that negative comment right alongside the top positive comments so that everybody is getting a look at what possible negative thing they might not have considered about a particular project or investment in there. So this way we are giving equal billing to kind of both sides of the equation and make sure that everybody is getting a fair look at the comments from their other municipalities.
All right, I think there was a question from Mr. Patterson and then Ms. Whitman.
Yeah, I think my question centers around, like, I understand that there's some due diligence around the paperwork, but what was the impact of said comments, particularly the concerning ones?
What do you mean by the impact?
Impact of, like, okay, the pipe should have been at 37 degrees, it's at 22 degrees. Does that now mean, like, there's kind of a backup issue that could happen because the water's not flowing the way it should?
I haven't had an opportunity to speak with the engineers yet on this. So this came in at the end of the week. I forwarded it on to Stahl Schaefer, so when we have the opportunity to speak, I will be able to learn more about those types of items. According to the comment, one pipe was constructed at 0.06% slope when it should be at 1%. Another was at 0.21% when it was supposed to be at 1%. So there is slope, but they are very shallow slopes on those two pipes.
And I guess, so the next step is to then meet with the team, understand what that means for opening the park. It just sounds like the pipes are there. They've got some slope. Let's move forward and fix it kind of on a fast follow.
That is my goal, is that we move forward with a shorty path to be able to open the park. And then once we understand how much of these 5 pages are physical alterations and how much of this are plan alterations, then we can work with Stahl Schaefer and potentially with the construction crew if pipes have to be reset at a new slope.
Very good. Thank you.
That's a good point. Are these like so significant that you have to keep the park closed, or is these little minor things that you can close off sections of the park and it still be accessible to the public? So
the reality for me has been that while the park has not been open, it has existed in its built state for some time now, and we have not witnessed problems in any backups from these pipes.
That's true.
However, there are regulations that we have to meet, and we will do the work that we have to do to meet those.
We'll recognize Ms. Whitman and then go to Mr. Frank.
Yeah, just a quick question on the pipes. Who would bear the cost of that to remedy that situation?
I cannot answer that at this time. I do not know where the error lies yet.
Errors and omissions.
Yeah,
Frank.
I was just going to speak to that. It's premature yet. Was it an engineering error or was it an installation error? So the contractor and the engineer, those are the things that the executive director needs to get to the bottom of.
Correct.
Well, I guess I have a question.
Yep.
I guess, does that take the responsibility off of our shoulders if there was an error from somebody else, or does that put the responsibility on our shoulders as well?
The responsibility is still going to be ours to make sure that these things get corrected, one way or the other. The financial responsibility is the one that I do not know yet.
Well, I think I figured it was ours, but I meant the financial responsibility.
Any other questions for the executive director? If not, we'll go into the agency director reports, and I think at this time I'll ask if there was any agency directors that wanted to. If not, we'll recognize Mr. Kaufman.
Well, thank you very much. If you recall, last year at this time, I was getting over the Happy Valley crud. And again, this time of the year, I'm getting over the Happy Valley crud. So I did bring my water this time, though, Rich, so I won't have to pause as much. But I want to give you an opportunity to view the 24 annual report for the Center Region Fire Protection Program and the Alpha Fire Company. The slides have a lot of verbiage on them. I don't expect you to be able to read them. This is just a message for me, and it goes out basically just we were so happy to be able to celebrate 125 years of the Alpha Fire Company last year. And so my message kind of is around that. And to the past and present members of the Alpha Fire Company, their dedication is just over the top. The number of hours that they put in and the things they do for our community, it's just amazing. But there's also a group like yourselves, families, friends, and supporters of the Alpha Fire Company that are just as important. So we say thank you to this group as well in my message. And just kind of moving forward, want to look toward continued support of the Alpha Fire Company. So when you get a chance, you can read that message in its entirety. Like I said, a lot of the slides have a lot of information, but I highlighted some things. We had 1,429 incidents in 2024, 4 more than the year before. So we set another record by 4 incidents. But for those that have been around a while, obviously you know our primary service area is College, Ferguson, Patton Townships, and the Borough State College. We serve a small portion of Benner Township, known as Benner Independent, which is part of the State College Area School District. Penn State University is in our primary service area as well. We do automatic aid to Half Moon and Harris Townships, and I have some charts just to illustrate some of that. So our incident trends over the last 11 years, again, trending upward. We started in a downturn just before COVID. Obviously, COVID put a big ding in our incident numbers, which was great because we didn't have a lot of people to be able to support a lot of calls during COVID. But we're trending upward again with 1,429 incidents last year. Those are the incidents by municipalities. The first number is mutual aid. So basically outside the center region, we went 109 times. We went into Harris and Half Moon Townships 9 and 6 times respectively. And then that number for Benner Township may look large, but it's we have a section of I-99 that's in Benner Township from the Penn Stater out to Shiloh Road, generates quite a few incidents. The university, the major portion of our incidents are in the Borough State College, and then each of the townships that are part of our primary. Again, a busy slide, but if you get a chance to look at it, it basically just breaks down our incidents types that I'm going to show in a pie chart. Fires and investigations, EMS and rescue calls, hazardous conditions, service calls, and then these last the last 2 big ones are important: good intent calls and false alarms. Good intent calls are those people that maybe burn their food, they're culinary challenged, and they burn some food and set off an alarm. The alarm systems go off. It wasn't a false alarm, but we're summoned because of the need to ventilate the smoke possibly. And then a big section of our calls is also false alarms, and I'll show you that here in the pie chart. So if you look in the green, those are false alarms, about 28% of our incidents. And then a good intent calls, another 33% of our incidents last year. So well over 50% of our incidents were false alarms and good intent calls. What does that mean? It just means that we have a community that doesn't know how to cook. No, but a lot of those calls are in multifamily dwellings, in student housing, and sometimes the alarms are activated because they sense smoke or something like that, and that's what we call a good intent call. And then others are just straight out false alarms, either system malfunctions, people activating pull stations, things like that. A large section of our calls are those type of incidents. Slide here to show the staffing, our leadership staffing for this year. We began with the individuals in yellow are the volunteer chiefs, and then the ones in white are myself and the paid staff, office manager, the assistant chief of emergency management, 3 assistant chiefs that work day-to-day with the fire department, and then we have a vacant position that's the captain of special ops that we're hoping to fill in July of this year. And again, another heavy text slide, but just talks about the fact that we were able to fill the special operations assistant chief, the assistant chief of emergency management last year, and then we have that vacant special ops captain's position. And what was mentioned earlier, I think when you were talking about policies, the fire and life safety inspector started this past year in October, and came on board to supplement this volunteer staff in November. The second paragraph talks about the thousands of hours of volunteer time, and that's really what I want to emphasize. We had between 85 and 95 active volunteers last year. Their shift hours increased by over 10,000 hours in 2024, and that reflects the increase in our probationary membership. We had a really good recruiting class the last year and a half, and those numbers reflect that. And you can see this in this trend chart. For the last 3 years, we've gotten more and more volunteer hours. Now everybody say, well, that's great, so why do you have to pay people to do this job if everybody wants to volunteer? And just a quick note, and I don't have it broke down on any of the slides, but almost 40% of our membership are students, and they come and go every 4 years, and you'll see that in reflecting our membership. In the fall, we might have 95 members, but in the spring, right after graduation, we might have 85, depending on our student population for a given year. Our training hours also increased last year, over 10,000 training hours in 2024. Over 124 staff and volunteers obtained Pro Board accreditation. And what's important about Pro Board accreditation is that's a training that has been provided. The individual takes a written exam, and this also demonstrates their skills in a practical exam as well. So that's how you get certified. It's not just sitting in the classroom and learning something. We have 83 Firefighter 1 certifications, 44 Firefighter 2, 38 Hazmat certifications, and 10 Traffic Management. And that's just a small snippet of all the different types of certifications. And then if you just take note to the slide there, the picture, that's a training session for grain bin rescue, and that'll be important for my last slide when we talk about that. But that training prop was in conjunction with Penn State's Ag Extension. They brought it in. They brought a truck full of grain so we could train on doing grain bin rescues. So that didn't cost us anything. That was a collaboration with Penn State, so we give kudos to that. So training hours, I said, increased as well. Several thousand more hours in 2024. And again, that just reflects the fact that we have more people and we have more people training. So the top left corner is a bunch of blue helmets you see there. That's a probationary class. That's the entry-level training. They were just completing that this fall, and that allows them, when they're done with that, to become entry-level firefighters, meaning they can go in the building with hose lines and fight an active fire. The slide in the bottom left is a truck-level training, basically the next level from the engine company training to give you more advanced skills involving the aerial towers and laddering and search and rescue. And then does anybody know where that picture's taken on the right? The hospital tower crane. That's a specialized training that happened last year. It was in conjunction with the South Central Mountain Task Force funded the training. Several of our members got to hang off the tower crane, as well as they were training in Beaver Stadium. We had a cooperative effort with State College Borough Water. We trained on their water towers. I can guarantee you I am not one of those people doing that training. I'm no longer in the position where I want to hang off of those buildings. But Whiting Turner was able to get us permission to do the training, and we had a specialized instructors that came in and provided that training, and that's Assistant Chief Neese hanging off the tower crane. We have a fire marshal's division. We did 7 investigations last year. Unfortunately, we had 2 church fires, one that was an active church and one that was a vacant church. We still have 3 open investigations, and when I say about an open investigation, basically there's suspicion of arson, and they're under investigation for that. Once they get to the point where law enforcement is handling the case, I really don't get a lot of information about what's going on with those, but obviously if they make arrests, we'd probably hear about that. We had over $1 million in structural loss last year, and the picture on the right was a first arriving picture of the individuals when we arrived at the Fillmore church fire. It's really hard to track structural loss every other year. You know, it goes up and down, but depending on how big of fires we have and how many fires we have, so there's not a real good way to track that. But last year we had 8 fires that we had over $1 million loss in. There's some interesting pictures. So they're both from the Woody Crest Church fire last year. I thought the picture on the right on the left was important because of the just showing some of the things we deal with when we're trying to fight a fire, and you can see the high tension lines and all the cable lines and stuff that limit our access to that particular building. And then what I thought was a really kind of unique picture of the cross on the top of the steeple on the fire, a picture from the inside the fire at the church fire in Woody Crest. We operate a certified hazardous materials team, and also have just recently taken on urban search and rescue duties for the task force. We had 16 trainings last year, over 600 hours to recertify our hazmat team members. We had 29 hazmat incidents. Most of them were relatively minor, were standby events. The two significant ones was a tanker rollover, which I'll show you pictures of a little bit, and then a lab incident on campus that was relatively minor. And I mentioned we took over the urban search and rescue assets for the task force in November. Those are part of a Pennsylvania asset cache. Basically, all the equipment was purchased using federal money. We're now going to sustain that asset. It is important to keep the asset available. Our closest resources were going to be Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And if you recall some of the training pictures I showed you last year, we've been training for the last 2 years to make sure that we're ready and certified to provide that level of training. So we took on those assets in November. Picture on the left is a combined training we did for the hazardous materials team with the City of Altoona Fire Department. We partnered with Norfolk Southern, did the training on their rail yard in Altoona, and then task force funding brought in the training props. The trains on the left are all training props. They have different things for us to be able to train on, stop leaks, and different things like that. So that was a unique opportunity to work with the City of Altoona, and took our team up there for an evening worth of training. And then the picture on the right, the tanker rollover I talked about. It was on Phillipsburg Mountain, coming down from Phillipsburg. It was a glycerin tanker. It was food-grade glycerin, fortunately. And we spent many hours out there assisting the Phillipsburg Fire Department with that tanker accident. Not only was it a tanker rollover with a hazmat leak, but it was also 100 foot down an embankment, so it made it a big challenge. We did 41 public education events last year, from schools to safety fairs. Had 71 and a half contact hours, over almost 6,000 people between the children and adults. So what's it cost? Last year, Center Region COG, almost $2.7 million between the operating and the capital programs. We get funding from the borough, college, Ferguson, Patton, Penn State University. We also have additional support from donations through Half Moon Township, small amount from Benner Township, and some money supporting the hazmat team from Center County government. The two other funds that are on here I wanted to highlight was the State College Firemen's Relief. Spent almost $650,000 last year on insurance equipment, protective equipment, training. There's a volunteer death benefit. And you can see last year's Commonwealth allocations was $582,000, so they spent more than what they brought in. That money is there to support the volunteers and provide safety and training for those individuals. And our State College Firemen's Relief, we don't hoard our money. They do a good job of making sure that that money's spent and spent wisely. But that's a big support. That's almost $1 million that's not going to our taxpayers. And if you don't know anything about the Firemen's Relief Funds, but basically that money comes into the municipalities and you have to bring that money forward to your local relief associations for expenditures. And then Alpha Fire Company does a mailer every other year to take in donations. They don't sell hoagies, they don't do bingo. We don't have time to do that. But they do ask for community support. And every year they spend between $75,000 and $100,000 on station amenities, uniforms, social events, different things like that. So there's basically 3 different budgets that support the program in its entirety. Here's a little bit of a diagram of the COG money, the operating capital numbers for the last 3 years. I call it relatively flat, but managers probably think it goes up every year, extremely large amount. But yeah, it's a lot of money. But when I go back to the numbers of hours that the volunteers are contributing, They're saving you a lot of money, taxpayer dollars. And then here's kind of end this up with Alpha Strong. But in 2024, I told you we celebrated 125 years. That was a great accomplishment on behalf of the volunteers. One specific event, though, August 10th of last year, the protection staff and the Alpha Fire Company responded to assist the Bellefonte Fire Department with 2 individuals trapped in a grain bin. That rescue was successful due to the hundreds of hours of training by staff and volunteers. Back to that slide that I showed you where we were able to use a Penn State prop and Penn State grain, and the amount of time that they put into that training saved 2 individuals' lives that day. We were actively involved in that rescue, and if it wasn't for our members and our training, probably would have had at least one person perish. The picture on the left is a unit citation for the first arriving crews at the grain bin rescue, and then the picture on the right is a Medal of Valor recipient, Assistant Chief Rob Neese. He was actively involved in the grain bin rescue and physically was engaged with that person for well over an hour. So those are just the highlights of 2024, and I certainly will answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for the fire director? I did believe there was, yep, I had a public comment behind me there. Just state your name and municipality residence.
Sure, from here is fine?
Yeah.
All right, so, I'm a member, I live in Patton Township and here in Park.
You could go up to the podium.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
Just want to make sure our CNET crew can hear it.
Sure.
Yep.
Hi, good evening, everyone. You are the?
Fire director.
Fire director. Okay, so I had a question for the fire director over here. I live over here in Park Forest Village in Patton Township. Hi. So I was interested. Are you not being allocated the right, enough hours to be able to handle maybe future operations? I'm hearing that there's maybe some potential understaffing issues that we may be running into or something now.
I'll get step back up.
Okay.
So when we talk about staffing, one of the things that part of our strategic planning process is to develop a staffing plan to make sure that not only the fire department has adequate people to respond 24/7, 365, but that we don't 100% rely on the volunteers that may be student members that aren't here during the summer or during breaks. So one of my goals as the fire director is to develop a foundation of staffing through the paid fire inspector, firefighter positions, as well as the additional staff that we're looking to bring on board to make sure that we always have an adequate response. Right now, our staffing levels are extremely high. We have probably staffing levels that are better than most third-class cities in the Commonwealth on a daily and nightly basis. But we cannot always rely on that. Our volunteer numbers in the Commonwealth are continuing to drop. And as we look at that for our community, we're just one semester away from not having enough volunteers. So that's why we're building a foundation for that. But I appreciate that question. Right now, we're in a very good position for staffing. Yeah. Did you have another question?
Yes. You better pay him well and pay his firemen well. Come on, guys. So, I did have another question. I saw the photo with the power lines, with the fire and all. I was interested, was putting any power lines underground ever discussed with you, or were any plans made available regarding that? It seems like maybe it could be a possible benefit to you and everyone, in common in general in this municipality. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's a good question too. So most of our older infrastructure is above ground. Most of our newer infrastructure is below ground. So in our newer developments and new, an area like this would be an underground power. Unfortunately, the costs associated with putting the older infrastructure underground only gets borne by new developments. So as new developments come in, sometimes they put that infrastructure underground, but otherwise, those are some challenges that we have to deal with. So, but those are good questions.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, very good questions, and great news about the volunteer numbers. I want to just take a moment to thank our volunteers, but also encourage those that if they are interested in volunteering or contributing, to either stop by the station or check out the website and see what you can do to support your community. So, any other questions for the fire director? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Kaufman. Item 13, authorities, boards, and committee reports. Executive committee.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
Oh, it says Mr. Recruiter. I have nothing further to add unless there's any questions, so everything was written down there. Finance committee.
Yes, Mr. Chair, as the executive director indicated, staff is preparing to take on an ambitious initiative of consolidating the program plan and capital improvement plan. I encourage you to get with your finance reps, and as we move through that process, share any constructive feedback that you might have on the new format. Thank you.
If there's no questions, we'll move on to HR committee. Oh yeah, that one is me. I have nothing further to add. Just thank you tonight for your support on the leave of absence without pay policy. It has been well discussed and well looked at, and frees up the HR director and the committee of some time. So definitely appreciate that. If there's no other questions, move on to Parks Capital Committee.
Yes, the Parks Capital Committee, as you read here, did have our joint meeting with the authority. I'll add to what's written here that the Parks Capital Committee is going to take on the challenge of funding our two major capital projects, the Boardwalk and the Hess Fields, discuss kind of the big overall picture of what to prioritize and how to draw in funds. Obviously, the price tag of those projects, we can't simply come to the municipalities and ask them to pay the full bill.
Okay. Any questions?
Just a big thank you.
Next, Public Safety Committee. Appears they did not meet, so that will move us to facilities.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the described in the agenda packet sufficiently covers our items.
Okay. If no questions, Land Use and Community Infrastructure Committee.
Yes, in addition to what's listed, there was a e-newsletter distributed to all elected officials on a couple databases regarding the summary results of the comprehensive survey. You should have received that either Thursday or Friday, and there'll be another newsletter coming out probably in a month or so. So look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Community Action and Sustainability Committee.
Take it away, Matt.
Guess climate.
Okay, I mean, Betsy's here, but I guess it's my show. So the report, of course, is found in the agenda. The only thing that we want to encourage is that folks are aware of the new carts coming out or being delivered for the new hauler. So the new contract begins on April 1st, and if there are any questions or concerns, I just want to direct citizens that when they get their carts, there are flyers and information attached to them. So please take a look at that, and I think there's encouragement too that maybe the municipalities share some of that additional information, maybe on their websites, et cetera, if at all possible. Again, just to get the word out to hopefully reduce some of the feedback or questions coming into the COG over this time. So, okay, Betsy's giving me 2 thumbs up, so I guess I did okay. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Excuse me, yes, I have one. I continue to have some concerns about the bulk waste pickup. And while it seems very convenient to be able to schedule it individually at your convenience, there's a strong tradition around of people coming around and picking up bulk waste. You know, call them the pickers overnight, and certainly it's stuff that doesn't go into the landfill. And so I hope you will give some thought to, or we can all give some thought to how we can address that. Can a community, for example, schedule one bulk waste pickup en masse for the entire community? Or maybe the community could have a bulk waste day of their own, just put it out there and let people know in social media, and then bring it back in, and, you know, it's a concern.
I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
can I address or at least open
Yeah.
conversation? So yes, and I think it's important. What I would envision is potentially that the communities would offer that on their own, but there wouldn't be any haulers to come in. There wouldn't be anybody to take stuff away. It would just be a, come get what you'd like off the street, but then we're going to put it back in our garage if you don't take it type of scenario. Maybe that's something that we can talk about in the future, having something like that. But as far as a hauler coming in to do it, I know that was addressed prior to entering into negotiations or looking at this, and it was just completely cost prohibitive, unfortunately. In fact, I think we were one of the few municipalities in the area, or actually in the state, that even did a bulk pickup anymore. And I think the last one was in maybe Delaware County. I might be misquoting that. But they were already looking at scaling that back or quitting that as well, because it was a model that hadn't served well for a while. And I think ours was for over 33 years we had it, one of the longest ones in the state. So it's an unfortunate event that it's just not done by haulers anymore, and it would have been cost prohibitive. Yeah.
Looks like Ms. Whitman might have something to add.
It's a great question, Bruce. It is the one that it was most troubling to members of the committee as we were reviewing the various proposals and various options, and Matt mentioned the cost prohibitive nature of that, and it has to do with having the needed number of people on site at a concentrated period of time, and the needed number of vehicles to pull that off. But I do want to add on a positive suggestion that maybe you reach out to Half Moon and find out how they do their bulk waste day. They have a special name for it, which I can't remember.
Riffraff Day.
Riffraff Day, there you go.
Nice.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Frank.
Just for the, I don't know if anybody else did, but I received an email today from Waste Management reminding not to use the new carts until April 1st. So I just share that with the group.
So to that end, we are encouraging folks to bring their carts in from the cold, set them by the fire, wax them at night, read them bedtime stories, whatever helps. But yes, not until April 1st.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Bernier.
I got mine today.
Okay.
And it had 2 tags on it. One said, use right away. One said, use starting April 1st. So I suspect that email came out as soon as those carts were delivered, and people said, which is true.
Thank you. That is news to me, so thank you.
Two separate tags. One said, use right away. The other one said, use starting April 1st. So, okay. And everybody on the street got the same double tag. I suspect that's a follow-up to that to clarify.
Yeah.
So to the extent that we could support that clarification might be helpful.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I was going to say this is a very important topic. So, I think more communication, the better. Right? If not, Parks and Recreation Governance Special Committee did not meet, so that will move us then to Schloss Center Region Library Board. Looks like Ms. Collins is joining us tonight.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to highlight what you see in the packet, which is that we welcomed 2 new trustees, Harmony Schmidbauer, who's a trustee representing Harris Township, and Margaret Gray, a new trustee representing Patton Township. They've received their orientation, had their first meeting, and have already been very helpful. So thank you very much.
Any questions? If not, do we have any report from the Center Region Parks and Recreation Authority? Seeing none. EM Council, Ms. Farkas.
The only thing I would add to our report is just something that we've talked about before. We no longer have Code Red in the county. They replaced it with Alert Center. So make sure that you're downloading it. And when you sign up, we want you to put in multiple addresses, because if you just put in your home address, you're only going to get alerts related to where you live. So if you have other addresses, put them in as well. And please share with others in the county. We had a great training on it at our session, so we're ready to go with that.
Thank you. Any questions? If not, I will open the floor. Any matters of record that staff or board members want to bring forward? If not, we have reached the end, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Got a motion? Do we have a second? Second. Okay, we're adjourned. Have a good evening, folks. Got you out with 4 minutes to spare before the hour.